Good evening. Welcome everyone to the Town of Lexington Council Work Session this evening, February 10th, 2025. Work sessions are less formal business meetings that enable council to obtain and discuss information regarding town issues from staff and or consultants. Like regular meetings of council, citizens are encouraged to attend and observe work sessions. However, they do not include public hearings, but do allow for public comment at the end. Please note, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Council does not take an action vote on items during work session other than to vote to place it on the agenda for consideration. Council work sessions are streamed live on the town's YouTube channel and minutes are posted on the town's webpage following approval of council. Are there any deletions from tonight's agenda? Hearing none, our first presentation tonight is from Police Chief Green.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and fine citizens of Lexington. Come on, being so shy. Detective Williamson approached the foundation last year in reference doing a fundraiser for Lexington, the breast cancer awareness patches. You got them up right there. This nice looking patch. These patches were sold from October to January throughout the Lexington area, throughout the state, and even we even mailed them throughout the United States. This was our first fundraising doing this type of for breast cancer awareness. 100% of the proceeds of these breast awareness patches is being donated to the Lexington Medical Center Foundation for the Crystal Smith Breast Cancer Fund. This donation will go towards supporting those who are focused on winning their fight against breast cancer. Tonight we have Mackenzie Manning from this foundation, and we want to present her a check for $1,050. And we're honored that our department, through the support of our foundation, can make this donation to the people here in our community. Thank you so much. Mayor, she can say anything? She want to say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this unique and creative fundraising opportunity. Throughout the breast cancer month of October, we have all kinds of students who do fun fundraisers, jeans for calls, and things of that nature. So when this cool and unique opportunity came to us, we were thrilled. This fund specifically supports local breast cancer patients with their diagnosis, whether it's wigs or post-mastectomy kits. And so it was so named after an employee at Lexington Medical Center who was at first a loving mother and a loving wife, spent 20 plus years at the hospital and then had her fight with cancer. So just like to always remember that, and that all of these funds are locally spent, and we're so thankful to do that. So thank you for thinking of us.
Which way you want to look? This way?
This way.
You're so shy, you
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Can you turn the check just a little? There you go.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Officer Williamson.
You was told to say name, so she might.
Well, I just wanted to know that Crystal Smith was a friend of mine, so I appreciate you doing that, and her family will definitely appreciate that. She was actually the, at her end, she had been the secretary for Michael Beater for years, so she was a wonderful person and is dearly missed. So thank you.
Our second presentation is also from Chief Green. Base planning for the Lexington Police Department. I love it.
Yes, and we're going to start off with a video, Mayor and Council, and we'll give it to Michael.
When the Lexington Police Department was built in 2002, our Criminal Investigation Division was composed of a division commander, a detective supervisor, and 2 detectives. Our current space was designed with 3 cubicles for detectives and then separate offices nearby for supervisors. Over the last 23 years, this division has grown to 11 officers, to include 6 detectives, a crime scene investigator, victims advocate, 2 detective supervisors, and a division commander. We've nearly quadrupled in size as a division, and yet the area where our detectives work is still the same size, and we have run out of space to grow. The current cubicles that we've used for over 20 years are a mismatched collection of units purchased as hand-me-downs from a local business. These cubicles do not fit together efficiently, resulting in unusable space and inadequate soundproofing between desks. We have tried to accommodate growth with additional desks to this room, which is restricting the work area of all the detectives. We are now using a small triangular-shaped closet space as an office, and our victims advocate works nearby in the town hall area of the building, which has her detached from our division. We're excited about the possibility of an expansion and improvement of the criminal investigation division, since the plan that we have seen so far would give all detectives office areas that maximize space and would support future growth. It would provide more privacy for detectives as they work and allow them to meet with individuals at their desks, which is not currently possible. This renovation would turn our photo darkroom, which has been made obsolete by advancements in technology, into 2 office spaces by using this space along with repurposing what is now a hallway. This plan would also create a larger office for a supervisor or our victims advocate, along with a walk-in closet for needed storage. Lastly, with this renovation, we would have a dedicated conference area, which we don't currently have, and this would allow meetings and where detectives will collaborate on investigations.
Currently, we have over 42,000 items held in evidence, and for some cases, such as homicide or robbery, we are required to store this evidence indefinitely. Cases like this take up significant space, which is already limited. This accumulation of physical evidence has led to lack of storage, and there's no longer space to properly manage all the items. This potentially affects the chain of custody and compromises the integrity of the evidence. If the evidence is damaged, a case could be dismissed or lost at trial. Year to year, our department takes in over 4,000 pieces of evidence while being proactive in removing items as cases are adjudicated. The highlights from this renovation would more than double our space for storing evidence while also installing a pass-through evidence locker system with lockers for electronic devices and refrigerator space for biosensitive items. A larger space will allow for proper storage, organization, and help with long-term needs.
Part of having a professional law enforcement agency is having well thought out spaces for officers to work and learn from. With our growth over the last 22 years, along with significant changes in technology, equipment, and how our officers work, comes the need for us to revision and renovate our patrol division area as we look towards the future. This space is essential as our patrol division is used for shift change, training sessions, meeting with supervisors, along with areas for our officers to work. The majority of the space within the patrol division is being taken up with several large, high-walled cubicles. There's currently not a dedicated space for shift change and group learning. Our supervisors have a challenging time with having 6 or more officers in their office and need a dedicated shift change and learning area. The proposed design and renovations would be a solution to several of the issues, with removing the current cubicles and replacing them with smaller workstations. This change would open up the room and allow us to have a conference area that will be large enough for officers to meet for shift training and group learning. These renovations are essential and will provide room for us to grow in the future.
Okay, Mayor and Council, tonight we have here Lieutenant Chairman who's over the investigation. Mark Maramontes, I told you I was going to your name, and I've been calling your name all day. With the evidence room, Lieutenant Hazelwood was out today. Sick, I think it's Super Bowl, but we won't say nothing. But we also have from JLA, we have Jeanette Thomas and Lee Doan, JLL, Charleston, and Augusta, and we're open up for any questions if y'all have for us.
Does anybody have any questions from the police chief, for the police chief?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that I went down before our council meeting today, and Chief and his officers were very gracious to show me around, and I was blown away at how you've maximized the space. I've only been over there a few times, admittedly. I speak with you regularly via the phone, but going in the department, I got to go into the evidence area and see some of the items that we're required to collect, and I was blown away at just how much you've maximized the space, outgrown the space. I learned the history of it, and also learned about some things that have gone on in town that I had no idea that you guys have to deal with. So no other comment other than just thank you for what y'all do. I couldn't believe some of the things that you were telling me about today and the danger that y'all are in at times, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you and your officers.
Yes.
Thank you, Gavin. Rachel, I see the money cost and everything. Isn't that part of the impact fees? Some of it?
Yes, Mayor. So modifications to town hall facilities is included in the updated CIP capital improvement plan for the impact fees, which will come back for second reading on March 3rd agenda.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor,
yes.
I'd also just like to point out, tonight is just the first introduction for all of council on these needs. You may have had previous discussions, but to date, we've not had a number attached to what they're looking at. So this is just to introduce you to the idea. So as time comes, assuming that the capital improvement plan is approved by council on March 3rd for the update so that we can include this project. When it comes to that, when it comes to budgeting, you all are aware of the needs of the police department, and if they make any asks, you know where it's coming from.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Stuart, I'd like to ask a question of you. There's no secret that I have some heartburn with impact fees, and the impact fees are obviously associated with the capital improvement plan, and on that, municipal facilities those monies can be spent on that. But say this council were to decide that we wanted to apply that discount rate like we talked about, the 100% discount rate to municipal facilities and or parks and recreation. If council were to do that, are there other funding sources that would be available to ensure that we could give our police department the resources that they need to continue to protect our town?
So the impact fee, as we've talked about, has always been seen as a supplemental, knowing that for many things, the impact fee will not be able to cover the entire cost. So if council were to decide that the impact fee will not be used, then this project, like the others associated with it, if council wants to move forward, we will have to identify some source. So with this one in particular, if council wants to move forward with this renovation, which the chief has brought forward, we can include that in our planning through the budget process, and you all can give us direction. So it would have to, come from, the regular taxes and of the town, but that's where prioritizing and council deciding what we need to do comes in.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on Gavin, and obviously this is just an introduction to this idea. Nobody's really had significant time with this, but to find $500,000 in our budget, we would have to cut $500,000 in our budget. I just want to be clear about that. There's not some $500,000 hanging out there that we could go find in our budget if we decided not to utilize impact fees and other means. We would have to come up with new revenue means, which would be some form of taxation or user fee, or we could make $500,000 in cuts. Is that accurate? I just want to make sure I understood right.
Yeah, that's not unfair.
Okay.
If you take away one source, something else has to give.
Yeah, understood. And then again, the estimates that we're looking at, I'm assuming, I just want to confirm, did the architect put together these estimates?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
The rough order of magnitude. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could follow up on what Councilmember Carn says, I certainly understand that assumption that we would have to cut $500,000, but I think that's what we're charged with doing at times, is making those hard decisions on what we want to prioritize. I also think later tonight we're going to discuss moving, I can't remember the amount, but I want to say it's $500,000 or so of funds for resurfacing that are coming from, I think, somewhere in the general fund. I don't have my notes in front of me. But perhaps that could be something that we look at doing next year, similar to how we're moving or tapping into that source of funding for road resurfacing. We could find a similar mechanism to do that to ensure the police department has the resources they need. Is that reasonable to think, Stuart?
So I think that's what we've said, is that you're going to have to find some source for the funds if one source goes away. So yes,
So does that mean we would cut road paving and stuff like that to make it, but that's over time that money adds up, correct? But we'll talk about that later, okay? Do you have something?
Yes, ma'am. So, Stuart, I did a quick head math on this, and I'm taking some cold medicine or some science medicine, so bear with me here. I think this comes up to about $764,000. If I remember right, the impact fee is only covering $500,000 in the plan that we had. I don't have the impact fee numbers in front of me.
I don't have that in front of me right now, but it was an estimate of what we might be achieved through the impact fee.
Okay, for the plan, so we would still either have to go back and offer that plan or find part of this money anyhow.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I think just to clarify, as I read this, tell me if I'm wrong, the construction cost estimate totals $548,000, and those two follow-on sheets are the total furniture and the total equipment, which are encompassed in that $548,000. Is that right?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
And did y'all come up with any other alternatives, or was this just the one option?
We did a single estimation based on recent projects. So at the moment it is just one.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, can I ask a clarification? In the capital improvement plan, this would fall under the municipal complex improvements. I'm looking at the fiscal year 2025 to 29. Okay, it looks like we've allocated 1.5 million for that, 750,000 in 26 and 750 in 27.
Right.
Okay.
So that is, not necessarily all going to be funded by impact fees. That is the maximum that could come from impact fees.
Okay, and I make that point to ask you a question, Chief. Obviously, if I ask you when you need it, you probably would say today.
Always.
Yes, but just to make clear, these funds wouldn't come available until 2026. I just wanted to make that point that even if we use impact fees, these fees wouldn't be made available until early as that 2026. So we would still need to find additional revenues to begin funding if we wanted to start that project soon.
Yes.
And just to clarify a remark I made earlier, those funds for the resurfacing project are coming from the undesignated general fund. Balance. Thank you, Stuart.
Anything else? Thank you, Chief, for your presentation.
No, we want to thank Michael, always does a great job, and Sergeant Mortensen who played the video. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Moving on to our business items for this evening. Our first item is from Assistant Town Administrator Stuart Ford, procurement update.
Madam Mayor, members of council, at our last work session, we had an extensive discussion about the proposed changes to the purchasing and procurement ordinance. Taking the feedback from council, we've tried to incorporate the direction we received as we understood it, and I'll highlight the areas we addressed. Number one, on change orders, there was a desire for us to have a percentage in there. We've gotten some feedback, and 10% is the number that we were told by someone who deals a lot with these types of projects that was an appropriate amount. And we remained with the $50,000 also as part of the determination, because we understand that we don't want to bring every change order back to town council. So at some point, it's just a routine change order, and at some point, it's a significant change order. So we tried to have both elements there, but we've also stated that if there's a change order that changes the scope of the project, meaning it's not a change order because, oh goodness, we've got a pipe that's going here and we discovered additional rock that's in the way that wasn't known at the time. And you're required to remove that rock in order to fulfill the original plan. That's just a change order that's necessary to do the original scope of the project. But if you're going to decide to extend the line to another area, or to add additional streets to a paving project, that's a change order that modifies the scope of a project, and that's something that would need to be authorized by town council on the change order. Additionally, if there's a change order on any project that would exceed the remaining amount of a budget, there's got to be some authorization for the expenditure, and so that would come back to town council for such an authorization. And finally, as another safety mechanism in this process, the town administrator may direct staff on any change order, depending on its nature, to say that town council needs to weigh in on that. So those are the changes we've made relative to change orders. We've also taken your guidance about that our regular everyday purchasing will be delegated as it is today, and council will only be involved in purchasing decisions if something is not specifically budgeted for, or if there's not sufficient budgetary authority to execute a contract. So those are relatively limited situations. Most items, of course, you've told us what to do in the budget. But if something new happens during the year, most of the time council is aware of those kinds of things, so we have to bring them back and get authorization. So those are the high points that are different from our last work session. And so we bring it back to you for your consideration, your direction, and also ask you to put it on the agenda for March 3rd for first reading.
We heard Stuart. Do I hear a motion to put this on the agenda?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem makes the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Councilman Michaels seconds it. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is quite an intensive document here. I'm just curious from you, Stuart, and you, Rachel, are there places of unnecessary friction in this document as it's now written that would be just problematic from a standpoint of day-to-day operations for you guys? I know we're trying to reach a good balance here of letting our staff run this very large organization, and we want accountability, but we don't want unnecessary friction that would actually cost us money in the long run because we couldn't be responsive to day-to-day operational type things. So from your guys' perspective, do you feel like there's any of those hanging chads in there? Or do you feel like with this document as it's written, you can handle the emergencies that come forward, and we're not gonna have people running around checking boxes over menial things that really cost us money? I just wanted to hear both of you guys' opinion on that and make sure we're not missing anything here, because you guys operationally run this show.
I'm happy to respond for sure, and Rachel can give her impressions. Rachel and I have discussed these things. We, as a staff, came together to discuss the areas that needed to be addressed. And the main area for staff is making sure that we had enough purchasing authority so that they could be flexible in the field. And with the $5,000 limit where they can purchase in the field based upon their best efforts to get quotes is, verbal quotes, is sufficient flexibility from what has been related to me about what folks face day to day. The enhanced, the higher levels for doing sealed bids, I believe are appropriate based upon the changing of over 20 years. And I think that we've actually incorporated where there is a little more flexibility to purchase items that from quotes that are a little bit over $50,000 in certain instances, things that are budgeted. But if they're not on a state contract, or if the state contract vendor is out of stock, we have some flexibility to do it more efficiently. So even on emergency purchases, if circumstances are such that in the judgment of the administrator, we do not have time to even poll counsel, the authority rests with the administrator to move forward to deal with the public emergency. So there is flexibility for us to be agile and responsive to the conditions on the ground we face, but making explicitly clear that we are accountable in our reporting to you about the purchases that are made and adhering to the standards that are in this ordinance.
I agree with what Stuart said. This allows us to modernize and get in line just with cost of living and cost of products of us today. That's probably one of the biggest frustrations our department's felt. And then frankly, I appreciate the clarity on handling of the capital improvement project so that not only council but leadership and staff understands when it's necessary to report back to us and when it's necessary for us to report back to you. That way we're all tracking in the same manner and we're keeping everybody up to date. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Stuart, I don't entirely have a question. I more or less wanted to tell you thank you for putting this spreadsheet together. It was very helpful for me. And I just wanted to highlight that even before the improvements, when you consider competitive bids and quotes that are not required, we're more strict than 9 of the other municipalities that you compare to, so 75%. And then informal bids, there were 11 less strict than us. There's only 13 total in this document. And then as far as the formal sealed bids required, we're still more strict than nearly 60% of those. So I think our standards are strong, and I'd just like to highlight the good work that y'all are doing to make them even stronger and modernize them.
Thank you, sir. Madam Mayor, if I may follow up on that. I appreciate that. Former administrator, Mr. Jim Duckett, always said, if somebody gives you praise, always accept it because you're going to be blamed for things that are not your responsibility. But I do want to say that very helpful chart was put together by Chad and Kathy in finance. They did an initial run. I said, no, we got to have more because council's going to want to know about this, this, and this. And they did it. And I appreciate the work of our staff.
Well, thank you. And Kathy, thank you. Y'all have done a lot of work on financial transparency and now this, making our procurement policy better, and we appreciate that.
Anybody else? Stuart, I would agree that chart was really good, given a comparison to how well we are actually doing. Thank you so much. With that, all those in favor of putting this on the agenda for March the 3rd, raise your right hand. And it is unanimous. Our next item is from Transportation Director Randy Edwards, Road Resurfacing Project.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you today is long overdue. And in a minute, I'll ask Michael to show you why, if he's not already. We have identified currently in what we call failing grade we have grades essentially A through F, so everybody can appreciate what an F means. These are all rated Fs that you're seeing before you. But we've identified 4.2 miles of road in need of resurfacing. Our last major resurfacing project was in the year 2013. Okay, so this is a little late, frankly, because we also have another set right behind it in what's considered to be Class D for another 4.9 miles. But before you today is at least a step in the direction of trying to get some of this addressed. The work would include curb rebuild, full depth patching, resurfacing, and milling of the existing asphalt pavements. The requested allocation is for $1.9 million. And in an effort to benefit economy of scale, the Golden Hills Special Tax District has requested to piggyback on our project. This has been asked for the last year in a plan we have to keep their roads up to satisfactory condition. So they would cover approximately $300,000 worth of their costs, bringing the total of the project estimated to be $2.2 million worth of road improvements. And there's a list, and you've seen it scrolling, but basically a lot of our neighborhood subdivision streets. List D is also in some of those same neighborhoods, so if there was some appetite going forward to actually expand this, there's certainly plenty there. So I'm requesting that you consider to add on March 3rd council agenda to authorize a road resurfacing project in the amount of $1.9 million. There's currently $891,680 in the general funds that were allocated for resurfacing for FY25. The remaining project balance for the townwide portion would be $1,008,320, which could be made available from the undesignated general fund balance. Golden Hills Special Tax District, as stated before, would cover their apportionment. Now, this is all subject to competitive bid, and so you could get a little more or a little less, just depending upon how those bids came out. And we do have a list of roads, but that's, I don't know how we want to report all that information.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, well.
Sorry. Sure. Go ahead.
I guess I'm going to ask for votes to then discuss it. Ask for a vote to put this on the agenda.
Can we discuss it first?
Yes, you can. It's normally the other way around. Right. I guess if that's what you want to do. Randy, before we get started on that, for you to educate us a little bit, haven't you always had a plan running of the roads that are failing and, like you said, A to F, and it's been, you keep an eye on the roads that are now Ds that will turn to Fs and that type of thing?
Well, ideally, we would eventually adopt a pavement maintenance program to where we would, in fact, have understood all of our assets and programmed them out year over year. With the significant other good work that we've been doing, that has not been as fruitful as we'd like. But so we have a list, and they just are continuing to get worse. So the Ds within a year or two will be Fs as well. And there's sections in them now that are actually Fs, but it's the percentage of area that, is kind of ready to pothole or is already potholing. Our own staff, for example, 2 years ago went into Lexington Heights, which is on this list, and actually did full depth patching throughout just to help, bridge that gap. Yes. And so to answer your question, there isn't a dedicated plan. We need one. This would really be more of a immediate catch-up. And then we can get into introducing, if I may, various pavement maintenance techniques such as crack sealing, microsurfacing, all things that cost significantly less than resurfacing. And just for magnitude of scale, so that you understand, This type of project will cost you around $15 a square yard. Remove, replace, all new. A crack sealing, which extends life of pavement 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 years, which we did do in Golden Hills, costs around $1 a square yard. Microsurfacing, which is just a little thin veneer put on it, is around, which is a sand mastic, not to be confused with the seal coating, is around $5 a square yard. So just to give you an order of magnitude, but as you can see, none of those solutions will work on these roads that we presented here. So ultimately, we'd love to get to where we do have a programmatic way of addressing our roads.
Okay, since you want to ask questions first, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just curious about the timing of this. Why wouldn't we take something like this on in our normal budget cycle instead of taking it on as a special item 3 months before we do our normal budget? Because it's a pretty significant item and it's an ongoing item, and I think it would be a lot easier for us to evaluate it in the context of, our $15 million general fund budget. So just curious about that. I'm not sure who that's for. Y'all toss it up, somebody grab it.
So certainly that's a viable option. We, last year in the budget, did assign nearly $900,000 for this to be a possibility. And we knew that we would have to really focus on what needed to be done, which roads, and knew it could possibly be more than that initial estimate. And so that's what you have before you. So the town, the undesignated general fund balance is available for your appropriation for projects that are important, that are priorities of council, if you wish to do it. We always, we want to maintain certain balances in undesignated funds at minimum, and this has been brought to you because it wouldn't jeopardize those. But we can address it through the budget process. There's no doubt about that.
And just quick follow-up, and I'm swagging numbers here, but if I remember right, we have 20 some odd miles of roads that we own.
33.
34.
33. Swags, close, man. So, and so at that points in the long distance past, the town acquired these roads. But I just think, and I don't know, I'm assuming you guys did the grading. Did your department grade these roads?
Yeah, this
Randy?
grading scale was adopted by the town as far back as '02. When it was initially, there was an evaluation done, and then it was updated in 13. And so we kind of just continued it rather than reinvented.
Right.
This is, ordinarily, roads would prefer not to get to this level of deterioration.
Right.
But that's a pretty aggressive approach, and this is purely one step in trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And just to tag on to what Stuart said, while there's it can be done via the budget. Right now, sitting here today, we would be prepared to get this on the street so that then, in all likelihood, we could actually perform the work sometime over the summer, even fall. If we wait until the budget process, we don't get it on the street until late August, and then we're paving in December, and that's not preferred. So that's kind of just a path. You know what I mean? As to timing wise, is to just lag. Timing is perfect now, but there's nothing stopping us from waiting until the budget process either. That just pushes us back another calendar year.
If I may, I'd also like to piggyback. So we have a duty to Golden Hills, and we know that just simply paving them, we would not have anyone bid just for their small portion. So Randy, if we just combine what's currently budgeted, the 891 plus Golden Hills, how much would we be able to get resurfaced in comparison if we didn't have that extra $1 million?
But that's about half, so somewhere around the 2 mile mark. But again, it goes back to what Rachel's alluding to is really size. If I had my preference, my recommendation would be you actually add an additional $1 million simply because we have the work to be done and it'll cost you less per square yard, ultimately. And so that's kind of getting a contractor interested is, I mean, SCDOT is rolling out millions of dollars worth of resurfacing. And so the smaller our project is, the less interested or the less quality of a paving operation we would get. So that's just food for thought, and again, programming and looking ahead, you know, as to what it's going to ultimately cost us to get above the wave, if you will, and get out in front where we can actually do preventive maintenance.
Understood, and I'll be quiet after this. I just look at this and I look at it as taking one bite of eating the elephant.
Okay.
And so before I sign off on taking one bite of eating the elephant, I just kind of want to know what eating the elephant looks like. You know, what is the long-term plan? And is there, I'd just like to understand a long-term plan before we just grab off this one urgent bite. Not that maybe we can't do both simultaneously, but that's the reason I want to talk about it before, because I don't know that I'm just ready to like pull the trigger on that till I understand a little broader scope of how we're going to handle the remaining part.
Absolutely, and so I think that is something that would be forthcoming by transportation staff, or if that's insufficient, we could always contract with someone to perform that work for us, depending on how urgently we wanted that done. I would look at this as what's proposed as one option. A second option would be to expend just the funds that have been budgeted alongside the Golden Hills funds.
What is our obligation to the Golden Hills? Because I know they're starting to call me and ask questions, the board is, because they're like, you know.
Well, several years ago, we developed like what we would like to develop for ourselves, but we developed for them basically a pavement maintenance plan that went out 40 years. And so on that plan, we crack sealed, I think it was in 2021, somewhere in that ballpark, 2020, in an effort to take care of what was done in 2013. Okay, so it had some cracks here and there, so we came through and sealed it. The plan now is to go through and pick up everything that was not done in 2013, which constitutes just under a mile. It's all these little pieces that ideally, if you could go back in time, wouldn't have been done that way, but they were, so let's correct it. And Golden Hills is able and willing and is, in fact, you know, over, I'd say 2 years at least, that we've kind of been on they need to be repaired. The good news about bad roads is they don't actually get much worse. You know what I mean? It's a full reconstruction, rebuild, so it's just a matter of when, and the more you can do together, the lower your cost, because you've gotten, I mean, the mobility and the contractor that can actually perform. But we're looking at around $250,000 to $300,000 worth of work in Golden Hills alone, and we did give them a pretty hard commitment that with or without the town, that we would be pushing that forward.
Madam Mayor. Oh.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I will just say this. The Golden Hills Special Purpose Tax District also wanted to wait because of the construction going on in the subdivision. You know, they added a final phase, lots of heavy traffic going in there, especially during the early days. And we basically have gotten more than 50% of the homes are built on that road, and the really heavy work has been completed. And transportation has addressed some of the failures that occurred as a result of some of that work. But we finally gotten to a point where it makes sense to go out there and do a project because of what was going on in the subdivision. And we would hope for the timing to match when we could move forward with a town project.
And like I said, I know that the board out there has been calling saying, how can we get this moving forward? Do we have to bid this ourselves, or can we do more with adding it to y'all's? You know, what can we do? So correct. I know that it's been important to them to get their roads fixed too. And I mean, Lexington Heights, if you haven't been in Lexington Heights, you need to go in Lexington Heights. The roads there are awful. That's probably the worst in town. Close. It's bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Madam Mayor, I have something to say.
Well, I think we got Gavin and Ron ahead of you. Gavin.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stuart, my first question is for you. I've been through one budget process, and my understanding is $892,000 was set aside in the general fund for resurfacing projects in the fiscal year 25 budget, but $1,008,000 is coming from undesignated, from the undesignated general fund balance. I think I understand that the undesignated general fund balance is essentially anything in the anything left over in our budget that's not earmarked for a specific purpose. But I've had a couple of citizens ask me exactly what that means. So I was just wondering if you could, for the layperson, explain the undesignated general fund balance.
So it represents the cumulative amount of funds that have come in that have not been expended by the town and that aren't needed specifically to address things that are have been designated by the town council. You generally want to maintain a strong general fund balance. A lot of communities don't have that, and they have to go out and borrow money at the beginning of a fiscal year just to make payroll until taxes come in January. And so what the town has done over decades is make sure that we maintain a sufficient amount of funds in the checking account so that we're not having to borrow money for operations before taxes come in January. And you all know that business license comes in May, June, and franchise fees mostly in June. And so the fund balance, you want to maintain that at a certain level. And if your revenues exceed your anticipation, money goes to your fund balance. It's balancing your checking account. And what we have been faithful to do over these years is when we appropriate fund balance, it has been for capital items, things that have long-term lives, so that you're not using this money for things that are routine operations, but you're investing it in things that are long-term, such as this road project. And I would point out that in 2013, we didn't have that luxury. We borrowed money, general obligation debt, financed the 2013 project that we've since paid off because of our financial discipline. So I hope that addresses your question.
It does, and I appreciate you explaining that. Randy, my next question is for you. I had some residents in Coventry reach out to me, and obviously that neighborhood's connected to Mallard Lakes, which is on the schedule. And they were trying to understand, being that their neighborhoods are connected. I drove through there today, and the roads appear, by my untrained eye looking, they appear to be in similar condition. So the neighborhood, I had two residents reach out to me, and they wanted to understand, if you're going to be in here doing Mallard Lakes, why wouldn't we do the entire neighborhood at the same time? Could you just help me better understand that so I could help them understand that?
If I could ask for 2.9 or 3.5 million, we can absolutely do that, because I agree with them.
Okay.
From the aspect of what we are doing right now, which is not preferred, is a worst first approach, okay? Those roads that they refer to, Coventry Lakes, and there's Coventry Lakes Court, I believe, all also warrant a resurfacing. The amount of structural failure is not as great, though, on those roads. So therefore, it would actually cost us less to do them today, and it might cost us in 2 years when we get to come back. But right now, because of the percentage of good, they only rank in a D category, that section of the neighborhood. Where the roads, if you continue on and drive over and look at, the likes of Widgeon and those roads, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but Fox, Chase maybe, or something like that, they're very, very poor. And so that Does that help a little bit? So it's a matter of, you know, how much of the elephant can we actually afford to bite off and chew now?
Right.
A contractor can absolutely knock this out. You know what I mean? It's really a matter of finding or allocating those funds and committing to doing it. But within a normal pavement preservation, we want to get D's and F's off of our plate and never have them again, quite frankly.
Okay.
That's the goal.
So essentially it comes down to funding.
Correct.
Okay. And my last question for you, and I'll move on, is Councilmember Carnes suggested maybe we do this in the budget process. It looks like we have $892,000 set aside to get us started. If council were to do that, would it be possible for you to help put together a long-term plan as we're considering the budget process to help us understand what we would need to do over the next couple of years to bring all of the roads that you've identified, I suppose, in D and F category? And would you need additional resources to help put that together?
So I think yes, and yes. So we can do it.
Okay.
Like, I am skilled and capable of doing it. It is a time-consuming process.
Okay.
There are consultants that will, in fact, you know, in a matter of a week's time, you know, come in and do a report, and that's what was done, I believe, in 02, and then again in 10 or 11, and then 13 was built off of that. It could be time to actually consider doing that for what would maybe be the remainder. You with me, if we were to agree to, like, can we get this knocked out with some of the budget we've got? And then it would be a good use of resources, in my professional opinion, to get a baseline, you know, of where all the roads stand, what they look like, and then we would do similar to what we did in Golden Hills, and that is come up with a projection so that we can look into the future and say, okay, over a period of 10 years, this is how much investment we need to be making in order to keep our all good roads good. That's kind of a term that's used in the pavement industry. It's just cheaper and easier to keep them good than it is to let them decay to this level and then rebuild them. But unfortunately, we are here today, so hopefully that helps a little bit because roads, for example, like I'll pick on Sterling Bridge, those are all great. Those are grade A roads, they're brand new, but they won't be in 10 years, right? They'll start to deteriorate, they'll start to break down. And we do need a plan so that we can keep them as good as we can, you know, as long as we can.
Right.
So that would be the goal.
Yeah, I'd like to see us put together that plan, and maybe a good use of some of these funds would be to get someone to help us put that together so that we have a long-term plan. That would be my thoughts.
So, but Randy, what you're telling us here is that you're more likely to get a better cost if you had this amount to do. I mean, if you bid this amount, you're more likely to get a better price coming in from contractors and get more bids in, because the smaller the bid, less likely somebody's going to want to do it.
Correct. I mean, if you go down to the $500,000, I mean, right now we're looking at asphalts running $140 a ton in place. You know, 4 years ago, pre-COVID, it was 85, and I frankly thought that was really high. You know, when we did the 2013, it was in the $40 range. So just kind of give you a magnitude. So it takes a lot of money now to actually do a simple resurfacing. And the resurfacing would be done correctly due to proper inspection, guidance. And I just say that because previous overlays, you can go out there and see them, and they're, you know, half-inch thick. You know, we're looking at a complete mill resurface, the stuff that you saw, 1.5 inches, 2 inches as needed, and that much being put back. So, but that's what gets you the 20 years, the 25-year life that you can then take care of over that time. But to answer your question, Mayor, absolutely, the more that we put into it, the lower the unit costs are going to be.
And I totally understand the fact that conditions of the temperatures and everything plays a role in it too. And
yeah, so ideally, we're just not doing asphalt paving in the wet or cold weather. I mean, that's...
Which starts November.
Right.
Okay. Ron?
Randy, is there a way, since we know we have the D roads already, is there a way to possibly work with a contractor and say, okay, we're going to tackle this section this year, and we know what that's going to look like, and we want to tackle this section next year, so you're gonna have 2 years worth of work. Give me your best price now to handle both projects. And maybe we can negotiate a better return, because they may say, well, you know what? Some of these D roads are right here. We'll go ahead and do those for a lesser fee because we don't want to have to come back over here with the equipment, etc.
So I think the way that would work is less through negotiation and more of a competitive bid, with the understanding that you would tackle, for example, the additional funds in the budget cycle. And so that then we could in fact do a portion now with the funds we'd have now, same contractor, and then roll into FY26 with the same contractor next spring, picking up maybe the ones on the east side of town as opposed to the west, and go ahead and do the Ds and Fs in that neighborhood now, so that you are getting that economies. You bid it all together under the premise that it would be a 2-year, we would do X amount this year, all in the same areas, and then we would roll the next year to pick up that. For example, on a small scale, we wouldn't go into Lexington Heights and only do, I think it's Saks Road or whatever, which is the worst, and leave the Lexington Heights Road for the next. We would definitely want to do them both at the same time, get in, get out, and be done. But we would then subsequently leave the Mallard Lakes projects until FY26. But bidding it all together will definitely get you a better unit price if they know that they've got this volume of work to do.
So Stuart, if we do that, could you get council some suggestions on where we can get the funding from to wrap up the Ds and the Fs so we get these roads caught up?
Yes, sir. Through the budget, we can possibly identify more, but one thing that does come to mind as a ready source is that you have general obligation bond capacity. We have $8 million in general obligation bands that are come due in the summer. Our plan was to bond those out this year, but you have a minimum of $4 million in geo capacity available today. So you have that flexibility in addition to other sources that we've alluded to in this discussion about general fund balances and that type of thing.
And then we could create a line item in the budget to pay that GO back off for over time, and keep that line item there so that Randy's got adequate funds from now on to maintain everything, so we don't get back in this hole of having to resurface Fs.
So that could be the big picture where you create that strategic plan long term.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, mobilization is a big deal, and you've got neighborhoods listed on here, but you don't have the specific roadways. It's not the entire neighborhood, it's specific roadways within the neighborhood, right? So, that's what I was thinking of, is economies of scale, like, this is not going away. So would it make sense to look at this from a geographical perspective and say, maybe break the town up into 5 geographies and say we're going to do all Ds and Fs in this geography first, in this geography second, that kind of scenario? Do you think you really pick up some economies of scale and some price savings if you limit the geographical scope of the smaller projects with the contractors? It's really something to talk to the contractors. I don't know that we can measure that out tonight, but I do agree with the fact of we should take out Ds and Fs in any geography that we're in, even if we have to go slower on the Fs. And you might correct me, you're a PE in this realm and I'm not, but I think that would make sense even if some of the Fs got pushed a little bit.
Yeah, so there's not, as Councilmember Smith actually pointed out, there's not a huge difference between a D and an F to the to the average citizen. They think their road is just as bad, and that particular section, they're correct. When we look at them holistically, we look at percentages of good that remain. And so to answer your question, ideally, we would do Ds and Fs all in Mallard Lakes and Coventry Lakes, because once you're in there, you want to get in, do it all good, and get out. And then everything is either a A, B, C, do you know what I mean, category. I don't know that we would enjoy true economies of scale from a geographical standpoint, just because we are so small, relatively speaking. But it certainly is wise to do the Ds and the Fs if they're actually there in the same neighborhood. I think more on y'all's side of the fence would be, can you, because right now we've got the Fs and they're clearly Fs and the Ds are in fact better, but are you willing to let, and I'm just going to pick on Lexington Heights even though that's would not be a suggestion, but let's say we did do the Mallard Lakes and Coventry neighborhood and Lexington Heights did slide. That's then going to come back, do you know what I mean, as to a council decision as to, I mean, are we letting that go so that we can get that extra $1 a square yard savings? Or is there a way, like Councilmember Williams mentioned, to actually figure out a way to move forward holistically and agree to, between this budget availability that would allow us to bid in a proper time frame and give it to a contractor so they could put it in their pocket for the next 16 months, knowing that, okay, in the budget cycle or whatever we have, we're going to commit to bringing this up to a level. I think that's a wise way to go. And so, but ideally from our side, it benefits you to get on the street soon from just advertising so that contractors can all be going, okay, this is a nice, $3 million worth of work I can put in my pocket, and the town's given me, 15 months or so to get it done.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Randy, if we were, if council were to consider tackling the Ds and the Fs, which I think is certainly a worthy cause. I mean, we already have issues with certain roads in town. We don't want to create more issues. So I think we should tackle those, but obviously the question of funding comes up. If we were to consider that, are you able to produce us a rough number of what that funding amount would look like to tackle the Ds and the Fs, or would you still need additional resources to help you do that?
No, Ds and Fs are very easy. I mean, we're ready to bid those out. It's an additional 4.9 or 5 miles on top of the 4.2 miles.
So essentially double.
So essentially a little more than double. Yeah. So just to wrap your head around that, that would get us back to fair. Okay, and that's a key thing. A C is still a C, right? So it's fair.
Right. And last question. Do you have any idea what it would cost to generate a long-term plan like that?
Off the top of my head, no. But I'm going to guess 50 plus ballpark, because they've got to travel every road. They'll do some structural testing and whatnot. So we're looking, I mean, maybe I guess too low, but
I won't hold you to that. I was just
we can certainly find out, and I would suggest that we put something like that in the budget for you to consider, so that we can do a baseline and have something we can work from.
Makes it easier to do your job.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question. So, Randy, a lot of the council members here have answered my questions, so I really don't have as much. One thing, though, if we did bring these roads up to where you want to, the good standard, how long would we have before we have to go back to putting this money into them again? Is this a many years, or are we going to have to reconvene again?
So, for example, in 2013, we did the Golden Hills project. And in 2020, we did a crack seal project throughout that. And while crack seal is not pretty and not, it's not black and beautiful, it's a black line going down the crack that's in the road. Well, the crack allows water to get into it, and that's what deteriorates the subgrade, which is what breaks it up prematurely.
Right.
So it's no different than you don't re-roof your entire house. You go up and you fix the crack or the place where it's failing. We would be coming back with a program then, say 7, 8 years out, with then a subsequent sequence of maybe 4 years after that. We look at it again, and then 4 years, and you just stay on top of the good road, so that ultimately you come back through and you simply put a brand new surface on it in 25 years or so.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. All right, thank you.
You want to go with that?
Something like that, yeah.
So we're sitting up here trying to decide how this should work. Should we do it in phases? Should we do a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 so we get all D's and F's in the town? Because you said you could cover that pretty quickly, and it's another 4.9 miles. How many more F's are there? Is this all there?
This is it. This is the F's. So the only problem with phasing, it's, and how we phase, I think, is more, I think if we could figure out a way to put out the project, we would get a much better interest. And then if we decide based upon, like, well, we want you to do, then go back to say, we want you to work in the east side, we want you to work in the north, we want you to, over from this time to this time, and then, to move it around and give that contractor the liberty.
You can give us all the D's coming forward?
Yeah, we have them listed.
Madam Mayor, so Randy, you've brought us a proposal to knock out the F's. So could you bring us a proposal to knock out the D's and the F's? I think, and maybe that does have to be something that's taken on over 2 years. But right now we've got, let's go patch the F's. Mm-hmm. And we've got half the money to do that that's available, right? Mm-hmm. But we are, as said, we do have a significant general fund balance, and we've also have great credit ratings. So I would personally be interested in just asking the question, what would it look like to do the D's and the F's maybe over the next 12 to 24 months, even if we had to borrow, the money, and maybe it's phased, maybe it's not. I would leave that up to your expertise, but just to give us a comparable of what it looks like to do D's and F's versus just the F's. And then Stuart could tell us what it looks like to borrow that money if we needed to borrow it operationally, or if we could just take it out of our fund balance, finding the happy medium. And then I think if we were able to accomplish that, even if we financed a portion of it, then we would certainly be in a position to look at everything C and above from a maintenance perspective instead of a replacement perspective.
So, quick math.
Yes, sir.
And again, because I understand these are all just projections based upon replacement and failure. An additional 2.6 million based upon this current proposed rate. So that would bring 2.6 and 1.9 is
4.5. Mm-hmm.
And so a good round number would be commit to 5 million. And then that way, if there's additional, we're not having to, we can actually just commit to doing it correctly, and then we move forward with a program, or even rope that in as let's commit to doing that, and we get back to where we're back to good.
Yeah, it's not an insignificant number, but if we could package that up and see if there's some economies of scale at that, and that may be more an offset by the interest cost, but we could at least evaluate it from that perspective.
So could you bring that to, would you want us to put this on the agenda and you bring that to go along with it, or do you want to bring it all back to work session and explain it to us?
I guess it really is 4.6 million would be the new request, or like I said, if we wanted to put in there also a $125,000 study to baseline everything.
Which
for 20 miles, because we'd be addressing 9 miles of our 33, 34.
Okay.
Going to be to just really bring back an entire asphalt pavement rehabilitation plan.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would suggest, in the interest of time, that we do put it on the agenda, and at our next meeting, we can have several different options there, and we can make a decision at that time.
Can you
Just be
give us some
first reading.
options?
We can put something. We can put it on the agenda as it is, and then we can modify it if we so desire to take in the Ds at our meeting. Otherwise, we're pushing everything off 2 months, and this all has to do with weather.
So you can go ahead and you'll have everything on your part, Stuart and Rachel. Y'all will be looking for ways that we can fund this or how we can come up with this amount of money.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just to add to that, there are a lot of issues that we are thinking about relative to the budget, including the sanitation contract and the like. We will try to give you some context with these numbers to the extent we can at that meeting as well.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, can I ask just one more question about the undesignated fund? I guess and maybe I need to come sit down with you to better understand this. I'm not a finance person. I'm trying to become one. I guess I'm struggling to understand how we can come up with $1 million of undesignated money, but we need to get a bond or issue a bond for the additional monies. Wouldn't we just assume that we would likely have another $1 million in undesignated money next year that we could spend on this? Or am I just completely wrong in my thoughts about that?
So the answer is, some years you may have, I'll give you an example. If you have a lot of open vacancies in on your staff,
okay,
you will not be expending budgeted money, which you have planned to. And so that goes to your fund balance. So some years you have more that gets added. Some years we spend a little more because we use contingency funds, or we decide to spend some money for capital outlays. So that the fund balance, there's not a guarantee that there's going to be any money added to it in any given year. That what we're dealing with is the cumulative of what has happened in the past.
But do we have historical data that we could look at and say this is how much average each year is contributed?
You can look at trends, certainly, yes.
And just to piggyback, because initially when you mentioned it, you referenced in our budget. So undesignated fund balance is not budgeted funds.
Right. It's not earmarked, or maybe earmark isn't the right word, but designated. It's money's generated but not designated to be spent is the way that I understand it.
So a fund balance, some people call your savings account, the money that you hold back that you choose not to spend. So it's separate completely from budget. And so just something to keep in mind with fund balance, it should be used sparingly. Some people call it a rainy day fund.
Right.
You never know what sort of catastrophe may happen. And to Stuart's point, there are many communities that have to borrow to make payroll. So we are in a position now where we have the funds available, which is why they're being offered up. So just because we have it now doesn't mean that we'll have it next year, or it may be a different amount, or there may be something very significant that council would need to spend that money on.
And does spending these funds put us in any danger of being too low in that account?
So we're not proposing anything that would jeopardize what we would consider and what we've been given to know from the rating agencies as your minimum that you need to have for in order to ensure that you're a good credit risk, and also that we are being wise and not having to borrow money to make payroll.
Okay, and I just want to clarify, I don't think that you're suggesting anything that would put us in danger. I was more or less wanting you to just state that for the public.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to make a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that we put this on our next council meeting.
I'll second.
We had all the discussion. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. And our last item is from Town Administrator Rachel Gleaton.
Thank you, Mayor. You all received an email about this as well, but we're bringing it to you formally tonight for consideration. The Lexington County School District 1 Educational Foundation is hosting an annual celebration on March 4th this year to support School District 1. All events organized by the foundation aim to assist students, teachers, and schools within Lexington District 1 through educational and need-based grants. Executive Director Julie Washburn is requesting a $1,000 sponsorship from the town of Lexington. Their letter and information is included in your packet. And Mayor, if you so wish, Ms. Washburn from the school district is here, and she's requested to say a few words if you'd like.
Julie, would you like to say something before we vote to put this on the agenda?
Do that if I'm really quick. I appreciate your time. I know any of y'all are familiar.
Give your name and your address.
Okay, Julie Washburn. I'm the executive director with the Lexington 1 Educational Foundation, and also a town resident for about 30 years now. But this event celebrates and honors the top 10% of all of our seniors, many of whom are town of Lexington residents, but the town of Lexington has historically been very kind to support it. We have other municipalities as well as corporate and individual donors, but it's an event that basically honors about 200 students who are graduating, going on to different career paths, but it's a night, honestly, just to celebrate their accomplishments. We have an awards program format that we've shifted to in recent years. There's a dessert reception following it. We give each student a gift bag for their achievements, and it's really focused on the academic achievements. A lot of high schools do athletics and other things, so the foundation years ago partnered originally with the chamber to create this event, but we would love for y'all to consider giving $1,000 as a platinum sponsor to join our efforts, and I welcome any questions y'all may have. The foundation solely exists to support needs in the district, which encompasses the town and a good portion of the county too. So all we do supports our students, our families, our teachers, and the community, in essence.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do I hear a motion to put this on the agenda?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem makes the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Councilman Carnes seconds it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand, and it is unanimous. Moving on to comments. Any questions from the news media? Any comments from the public regarding items listed on tonight's agenda? Remember, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Brewer. I reside at 349 South Church Street here in Lexington Town Center. Kudos to everybody that could follow all the numbers that have been flying around tonight. It's tougher than Mike Spencer board. I have 2 major calls to action for consideration, and they may lead to a third that is helpful. One is regarding the police upfit. Last year I asked for a low, medium, and high set of expenditures for CapEx. I'd like to see that here. There's lots of ways to skin the cat. Setting aside the criticality of evidentiary rooms and security, commercial upfits, there's lots of ways. Reclaimed materials, the labor that's required to make that go, lots of ways. We've all done a lot of remodeling, so I'd like to see that in the direction given to the architecture firm or any others that you consider bidding. If you have questions about that, I can elaborate. Impact fees. Lots of questions here about impact fees. I'd like to request that there is a down effort.
They're not on the agenda tonight, Greg.
They came up a lot tonight. The impact fees need better understanding for the public to grasp the complexity. As you guys evaluate those opportunities for how you can afford some of these items, I think it could be instructive to look at the last 5 years on the way to the next 5 years to see how there might be availability of funds. Virginia Hilton Park's original budget was $3 million. It went to 10. That's $7 million as a delta. I'm just curious. There seems to be a lot of money there for the roads of $3.5 million for the D and F that I heard about Randy talking about. So those are a few items that I think could be very instructive as you guys go forward, but I'm not involved in this as much as you all are. I'm trying to follow it from afar. But if you'd like to talk further, I'd be happy to, because our team at Save Lexington SC stands by at the ready to help look creatively at some of those areas for cost out. And given the momentum coming from Washington that has a trickle-down effect here, the government of efficiency moves that are being made there should begin to happen here. We're ready to go. So, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Anybody else? Hearing none, we will reconvene into executive session for our last item.